No matter what anyone says, one reality is impossible to ignore. The people involved are not working together the way they should be. Communication is fractured. Coordination is weak. The response feels disorganized. And because of that failure to align, momentum is slipping away. Ground is being lost, not quietly but visibly. Welcome to Watch Mojo. Today, we're examining the most shocking moments and the most disturbing revelations from Netflix's documentary series Sean Combs, The Reckoning. Before we begin, a necessary warning. Some of the material discussed contains distressing details that may be difficult for viewers to process. From its opening moments, the documentary introduces a man who appears to be negotiating with his own reality. Sean Combs speaks as if he's still inside a story he believes he can control, as though the ending has already been written, and all that remains is to endure the turbulence before everything resolves neatly. In these early scenes, he talks like someone clinging to the idea of a happy conclusion, even as the world around him begins to close in. But what the footage ultimately reveals is something far more unsettling. This isn't a carefully structured narrative arc. It's a crisis unfolding in real time, raw, unstable, and increasingly impossible to contain. The series wastes no time establishing its central image, a powerful mogul in visible free fall. That portrait is built almost entirely from footage captured by a videographer Combs personally hired, someone tasked with documenting his daily life in New York during the tense days leading up to his arrest. The camera follows him through hotel rooms and private spaces, catching moments that feel less staged and more exposed. We see him pacing endlessly, stopping at windows, scanning rooftops across the street where law enforcement appears to be stationed. His movements are restless, his attention fractured, his energy sharp with anxiety. Even his speech feels charged, as if every word is an attempt to stay one step ahead of something he knows is coming but cannot escape. At one point, Combs instructs the videographer to capture brief shots of the officers watching from above. These aren't cinematic flourishes. They feel compulsive, like proof he needs to externalize what's already consuming his thoughts. It's less about storytelling and more about confirmation. Shortly after, another revealing moment unfolds when he makes an urgent phone call to his team. His request isn't subtle. He demands they find someone who has dealt with what he calls the dirtiest of dirty business, someone experienced in media manipulation, propaganda, and crisis influence. This isn't a call for routine legal counsel or standard public relations damage control. It's a plea for someone who understands how narratives are bent, how perception is shaped, and how power survives when reality becomes a liability. Despite the mounting tension, the documentary also shows Combs moving through public spaces, walking among everyday people, even returning to Harlem, a place deeply tied to his identity and public mythology. For a brief moment, it appears as though he's reconnecting with the community that helped define him. The interaction feels almost grounding, as if proximity to familiar streets and faces might offer reassurance or legitimacy. But that illusion dissolves the instant he gets back into his vehicle. His demeanor shifts immediately. He asks for hand sanitizer and jokes about needing to cleanse himself after so much physical contact. The moment lands uncomfortably, exposing the distance between the image of connection he projects and the private instinct to separate himself from those very interactions. From there, the documentary pivots toward a darker and more uncomfortable theme: the way fame can be born not from success, but from catastrophe. Long before Sean Combs became a household name, the series argues that his rise into public consciousness was accelerated by tragedy. It revisits raw, unsettling footage from the 1991 charity basketball game at City College in New York, an event filled with hype, celebrity appearances, and massive anticipation. Hip-hop and R&B artists were promoted heavily, and Combs played a role in driving the excitement. But the infrastructure couldn't withstand the demand. A gym designed to hold just over 2,700 people was flooded by nearly 5,000 fans. The crowd surged beyond control. Security failed. Panic spread, and the event ended in a deadly stampede, marking a moment that would quietly reshape the trajectory of everything that followed. According to the documentary, that tragedy didn't merely mark a dark moment in Sean Combs' early career, it fundamentally redirected it. Overnight, his name became known far beyond industry circles, and instead of stepping back from the glare of public scrutiny, he stepped directly into it. The attention, however grim its origin, became fuel. In the aftermath, Combs leaned into visibility, momentum, and ambition, helping to launch what would eventually become Bad Boy Entertainment. Yet the series introduces a troubling allegation beneath that rise, that Combs intentionally kept the company out of his own name. According to the documentary, this decision was meant to insulate him from potential financial liability, specifically from payouts connected to the families affected by the deadly disaster. If true, it suggests that risk management was embedded into the foundation of the empire from its very beginning. From there, the documentary shifts into one of the most infamous and emotionally charged chapters in hip-hop history: the East Coast-West Coast feud, and the murders of Tupac Shakur and the Notorious B.I.G., rather than framing the conflict as a purely organic cultural rivalry. The series presents it as something far more volatile, an escalation that crossed from artistic competition into the realm of real violence and gang involvement. The documentary suggests that the feud was, at least in part, manufactured and inflamed behind the scenes, with allegations that Combs and Bad Boy Records played a role in intensifying tensions. It points to claims that gang affiliations became intertwined with the music industry itself, alleging that the Crips aligned with Bad Boy while the Bloods aligned with Death Row Records and Suge Knight. What began as music and image, the series argues, evolved into something far more dangerous. One of the most explosive allegations emerges through the account of Dwayne "Keith D. Davis, who claims direct involvement in the events surrounding Tupac Shakur's murder. In the documentary, Davis alleges that Combs openly offered a $1 million payment for the deaths of Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight, an offer he claims was made without subtlety and in front of others. According to the series, a portion of that money was allegedly handed to an intermediary named Zip, who was meant to deliver it. However, Davis claims that the money never reached him, leaving the alleged arrangement suspended in a murky space between promise and denial. The documentary presents this claim not as established fact, but as a deeply disturbing allegation that continues to haunt the unresolved legacy of the case. The series then turns inward, examining the complex and deeply intertwined relationship between Combs and the Notorious B.I.G. It portrays that bond as both career-defining and increasingly controlling. Biggie was signed while Combs was still working at Uptown Records, and even after Combs was fired, he kept Biggie close, refusing to let go of the artist he believed could define his future. Eventually, Combs persuaded Clive Davis to invest in his vision, a move that helped launch Biggie into global superstardom. But beneath the success, the documentary alleges, lay an unhealthy dynamic. It claims Combs was deeply jealous of Biggie's friendship with Tupac and sought absolute dominance over Biggie's career, over his decisions, his movements, and his loyalties. What outwardly appeared to be mentorship, the series suggests, may also have been about control. After Tupac's death, the documentary says Biggie was sent to Los Angeles, a city the series repeatedly frames not just as a location, but as a loaded symbol, a place heavy with unresolved anger, street alliances, and the lingering shock of a murder that had already changed the course of hip-hop history. In the film's telling, Los Angeles wasn't simply another promotional stop. It was enemy territory. A city where tensions hadn't cooled, where loyalties were blurred, and where violence felt close enough to touch. According to the documentary, Biggie understood that instinctively. He didn't want to stay. He didn't want to linger. He wanted to leave Los Angeles as quickly as possible and move on to overseas media commitments, interviews, appearances, obligations that would place physical distance between himself and a city still vibrating with hostility. Those plans, the series claims, were already in motion, Flights were discussed, schedules were set, an exit was available. But the documentary alleges that Sean Combs shut that exit down. Instead of allowing Biggie to leave, Combs allegedly insisted on throwing a high-profile party in Los Angeles, a move that locked Biggie into the city at precisely the moment when many around him believed leaving was the safest option. Travel plans were canceled, overseas obligations were abandoned, and the series frames this decision as a turning point that cannot be separated from what followed. In its narrative, this wasn't a passive oversight or a miscalculation. It was an active choice, one that kept Biggie exactly where danger was most concentrated. The documentary goes so far as to argue that this insistence didn't merely expose Biggie to risk, it ushered him directly toward it. Then comes an allegation that adds a chilling layer to the aftermath. According to the series, following Biggie's death, Combs made his funeral a recoupable expense. In industry terms, that means the cost of the funeral would be charged back to Biggie himself, deducted from future earnings rather than absorbed by the label. The documentary lingers on what that implies, that even in death, even in mourning, the relationship between artist and empire was still governed by contracts, balance sheets, and recovery of costs. Grief, the series suggests, did not suspend the business. From there, the reckoning shifts forward in time and inward in focus, moving from historical tragedy into the sterile, fluorescent-lit world of the courtroom. It's here that memory, credibility, and power collide most visibly. Former staffer Capricorn Clark becomes one of the most pivotal figures in this phase of the documentary, remembered for delivering testimony that was emotional, graphic, and impossible to ignore during Combs' federal trial. Clark alleges that after Combs learned Cassie Ventura was dating Kid Cutie, he kidnapped her, an act that, if true, would represent a staggering abuse of power. But Clark explains that she chose not to report the incident at the time. Her reasoning, she says, wasn't indifference or confusion. It was loyalty to what she calls the culture. She believed that exposing the incident would do more than destroy one man. It would collapse an entire ecosystem built around influence, fame, and silence. In her telling, protecting that world felt more urgent than protecting herself. Clark also recounts her very first day working for Combs, describing it not as an introduction but as a warning. She claims he took her to Central Park and threatened to kill her because of her perceived connections to Suge Knight. According to Clark, the message was unmistakable. Fear would be the foundation of the relationship. Control would be asserted immediately. Boundaries would be erased before they could even form. Yet the documentary does not present these claims without examining how they were received. Instead, it introduces a critical fracture point in the story. Jurors reportedly struggled to believe Clark's testimony. One juror interviewed explains that as powerful as the allegations were, the way they were delivered often felt disorganized and difficult to follow. Details blurred, timelines shifted, statements appeared to contradict one another. The juror recalls moments of confusion so pronounced that she found herself unconsciously mirroring Sean Combs' reactions in the courtroom, making the same baffled expressions, sometimes glancing toward other jurors as if silently asking whether anyone else felt lost. The documentary is careful here. It doesn't frame this as proof that Clark was lying. Instead, it highlights a brutal truth about the justice system. Credibility isn't judged only on what is said, but on how clearly and consistently it can be understood. And in that environment, confusion becomes doubt, no matter how serious the accusation. That same tension between moral outrage and legal precision resurfaces when the series examines jurors' reactions to Cassie Ventura's testimony. Ventura described years of alleged coercion, substance-fueled freak-offs, and the existence of supposed blackmail videos, accounts that jurors openly acknowledge were disturbing, unsettling, and emotionally heavy. Several jurors say they felt the weight of what she described. They didn't dismiss the suffering. They didn't minimize it. But when it came time to deliberate, many admit they struggled to convert that horror into convictions on trafficking and racketeering charges. According to their interviews, The issue wasn't disbelief, it was legal alignment. One juror explains that while domestic violence appeared evident and deeply troubling, it wasn't one of the charges being tried. That created a gap between what felt morally undeniable and what could be legally proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Another juror adds that Ventura's decision to remain with Combs at certain points complicated their interpretation of the relationship. From a legal standpoint, it introduced ambiguity, layers that made it difficult to define the situation strictly through the frameworks of force, fraud, or coercion required by the statutes. In the end, the documentary presents this phase of the story not as a failure to recognize harm, but as a collision between lived reality and legal architecture, a system that demands clarity in situations that are anything but clear. Another major revelation in the documentary emerges through video footage recorded just days before Sean Combs' September 2024 arrest in Manhattan. The moment is deceptively simple, almost casual. Combs is seen speaking on the phone with Dana Tran, the mother of his young daughter, Love. His voice is calm, even reassuring, as he tells her that he is about to deposit $200 million right now. There is no panic in his tone, no urgency, no visible fear, and that calm is precisely what makes the moment so unsettling. The filmmakers linger on this call, framing it as more than a financial transaction. In their interpretation, it becomes a snapshot of Combs' state of mind at a critical moment, someone who appears fully aware that the ground beneath him is shifting. According to the documentary, this call suggests a man preparing for impact, bracing himself for an inevitable collision with the justice system. With federal scrutiny tightening and legal pressure mounting by the day, the series implies that Combs was attempting to move or secure a massive portion of his reported $400 million fortune before events overtook him. It is presented not as desperation, but as calculation, a final act of control before control is taken away. From there, the reckoning moves into one of its darkest and most disturbing chapters: allegations surrounding Combs' so-called freak-offs. These sessions are described as orchestrated sexual encounters involving female partners and hired male performers, arranged and overseen by Combs himself. The documentary takes care to show that these were not portrayed as spontaneous or consensual group experiences, but as highly structured events governed by rules, supervision, and control. The series centers on Clayton Howard, who claims he was flown in repeatedly over an 8-year period to participate in encounters involving Combs and his former partner, Cassie Ventura. According to Howard, nothing about these sessions was left to chance. He describes a rigid system where Combs dictated every aspect of the environment: how participants behaved, what substances were used, how long sessions lasted, and even how bodies were positioned. Howard alleges that instructions extended to the use of baby oil and the collection of bodily fluids, details that strip the encounters of intimacy and recast them as something clinical, monitored, and transactional. In his telling, these were not private moments between adults, but controlled performances staged for power and dominance. One detail Howard recounts stands out for its symbolic weight. He claims he was repeatedly summoned on March 9th, the anniversary of the notorious B.I.G.'s murder. The documentary does not assign a definitive motive to this pattern, but the repetition alone creates a chilling undertone. Whether coincidence or ritual, the timing suggests an unresolved fixation, linking sex, control, grief, and memory into a single recurring event. The series allows that discomfort to linger without explanation, leaving viewers to sit with its implications. The emotional intensity deepens further in one of the documentary's most jarring moments, when former Danity Kane singer Aubrey O'Day reads aloud an affidavit she says was brought to her attention by a lawyer. The affidavit describes an alleged incident from 2005 in which a female witness claims she accidentally entered a room and saw O'Day partially unclothed, appearing disoriented and unresponsive, while allegedly being assaulted by Combs and another man. The words are clinical. The accusation is severe. but it's O'Day's reaction that leaves the deepest impression. As she finishes reading, O'Day tells the filmmakers that she has no memory of the alleged incident. There is no denial, only absence. Even more unsettling, she admits she does not want to know whether it truly happened. The moment captures a kind of psychological horror that cannot be resolved on screen. The realization that there may be gaps in one's own memory where something profoundly traumatic could exist. It is not framed as closure, but as unresolved damage, something that may never be fully accessed or understood. Elsewhere in the series, O'Day recounts her departure from Danity Kane in 2008, alleging that she was pushed out of the group after refusing what she describes as Combs' sexual advances. She claims that after rejecting explicit emails and pressure to participate, retaliation followed. According to her account, that refusal ultimately led to her removal from the group and the quiet dismantling of her career. The documentary presents her story as part of a broader pattern, where professional success was conditional and refusal carried consequences. The series then shifts to one of its most sobering and grounding voices, Bad Boy Entertainment co-founder Kirk Burroughs. His testimony strips away celebrity and spectacle, replacing it with a stark account of fear, coercion, and loss. Burroughs alleges that Combs forced him out of his 25% ownership stake in Bad Boy by threatening him with a baseball bat. Despite this, Burroughs says he remained with the company as an employee, suggesting a relationship sustained not by partnership, but by intimidation. According to Burroughs, the final rupture came after Biggie's death. He claims Combs demanded that Biggie's newly renegotiated contract be secretly altered to favor Bad Boy by swapping pages after the agreement had already been signed, without the knowledge or consent of Biggie's family. Burroughs says he was asked to facilitate this deception, to quietly rewrite history on paper. When he refused, he claims he was fired approximately 90 days later. What followed, Burroughs describes, was total collapse. He says he was blacklisted within the industry, cut off from opportunities, and erased from the very world he helped build. Over time, the professional fallout became personal devastation. His finances unraveled. His stability disappeared. Eventually, he says, he became homeless. Toward the end of the documentary, Burroughs delivers his most devastating allegation of all, that he, too, was sexually assaulted by Combs. He describes abuse not confined to the employer-employee relationship, but extending into deeply personal violation, acts that, in his words, crossed far beyond professional power into something profoundly damaging. By the time Sean Combs, The Reckoning reaches its closing moments, the documentary has assembled a portrait not of isolated accusations, but of an ecosystem shaped by control, silence, and fear. Story after story overlaps, patterns repeat, power concentrates, and accountability remains elusive. The series does not tell viewers what to think. Instead, it leaves them sitting with the weight of what has been presented, forced to confront the uncomfortable space where influence, wealth, loyalty, and justice collide. So what do you make of these revelations presented in Netflix's Sean Combs, The Reckoning? Share your thoughts in the comments below.